Death is not the end. I know this sounds like wishful thinking, like religious consolation, like something you say at funerals to comfort the grieving. But I'm not speaking as a priest or a philosopher making comforting claims about souls and afterlife. I'm speaking as a physicist who has spent 60 years studying the deepest laws of nature. And what physics tells us, what the mathematics demands, is that information is never destroyed. Every thought you've ever had, every choice you've made, every moment of your existence is encoded in the geometry of space-time permanently. And that changes everything about what death means. My name is Roger Penrose, and I won the Nobel Prize for proving that black holes are inevitable consequences of Einstein's equations. But the work that consumed me wasn't just showing that black holes must exist. It was understanding what happens to information that falls into them. Because that question, what happens to information, is the question at the heart of existence itself. And the answer is profound. Information is eternal. It cannot be destroyed. Not by black holes, not by heat death, not by death itself. Let me start with what most people believe. The materialist view says consciousness is produced by the brain. Neurons fire, chemicals flow, and somehow mysteriously subjective experience emerges. And when the brain stops working, when the neurons stop firing, consciousness ends. You cease to exist. The information that was you, your memories, your personality, your experiences is erased, gone, as if you never were. This view seems to follow from physics. After all, brains are physical objects. They obey the laws of thermodynamics. And the second law says entropy increases, which seems to mean information gets lost in noise, gets scrambled, gets destroyed. Your brain decays. The atoms that made it up disperse. The patterns that encoded your memories dissolve. And you, as an information structure, cease to exist. But this is wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. And the proof comes from quantum mechanics and black holes, two areas that seem to have nothing to do with death, but turn out to be everything. Let me tell you about my bet with Stephen Hawking. In the 1970s, Stephen showed that black holes emit radiation, what we now call Hawking radiation. This was revolutionary. It meant black holes aren't perfectly black. They glow very faintly with thermal radiation, and crucially, they evaporate over unimaginably long time scales. A black hole radiates away its mass and eventually disappears completely. But there was a problem. Hawking calculated that the radiation is thermal, perfectly random, containing no information about what fell into the black hole. If you throw an encyclopedia into a black hole and the black hole evaporates, the Hawking radiation that comes out is just heat. The information in the encyclopedia is gone, destroyed. This violates quantum mechanics, which says information must be conserved. It's called the information paradox. Stephen believed information is destroyed. I believed it must be preserved. We made a bet. For years, we argued. I kept insisting the mathematics of quantum mechanics forbids information destruction. There must be a mechanism. And in 2004, Stephen conceded. He announced at a conference that he'd been wrong, that information must be preserved after all. He gave me a baseball encyclopedia as the prize. But here's the crucial point. The resolution of the paradox shows that information is encoded on the event horizon of the black hole, not inside, where we can't see it, on the surface as a kind of hologram. Every bit of information that falls in leaves an imprint on the horizon, and when the black hole evaporates, that information is released back into the universe through subtle correlations in the Hawking radiation. Information is not destroyed. It's encoded, preserved, and eventually released. And if that's true for black holes, the most extreme environments in the universe where space-time curvature is infinite, then it's true everywhere. Information cannot be destroyed ever. Now apply this to you. You are not just matter. You are information, a pattern, a structure. Your memories are information states in your brain. Your personality is information encoded in neural connections. Your consciousness moment by moment is information being processed through quantum collapse in your neurons. You are fundamentally information organized in a particular way, and when you die, your brain stops functioning. The processing stops. But the information doesn't disappear. It can't. The laws of physics forbid it. Every thought you had, every experience you lived, every choice you made, it all happened. It all occurred in space-time. And space-time is not a stage that things happen on and then disappear. Space-time is a four-dimensional structure. Events that happen don't unhap. They're permanent features of the geometry. Let me explain what this means. In Einstein's general relativity, space-time is a four-dimensional continuum, 3 dimensions of space, 1 of time. But time is not fundamentally different from space. It's just another dimension, and in this four-dimensional structure, your entire life from birth to death exists as a world line, a path through space-time. Right now, you're experiencing one moment on that world line, but from the perspective of space-time itself, all the moments are equally real. Your past exists not as a memory, not as a recording, but as a feature of space-time geometry. And when you die, your world line doesn't disappear. It ends. Yes, it reaches a final point, but everything that came before remains forever. Think about it this way. If you draw a line on a piece of paper, the line exists. If you stop drawing, the line doesn't disappear. It's still there, complete from beginning to end. Your life is like that line drawn in the four-dimensional geometry of space-time. When you die, you stop adding to the line. But the line itself, everything you were, everything you did, remains. This is not metaphor. This is physics. The block universe view of general relativity says all moments in time exist equally. The present is not privileged. The past doesn't cease to exist just because we're no longer in it. And your life, your consciousness, your experiences, they're all part of the permanent structure of space-time. But there's more. Not only does your world line persist in space-time, but the information you created spreads throughout the universe through quantum entanglement. Every choice you made, every observation you performed, every quantum state you collapsed, those created correlations with the rest of the universe, and those correlations persist. When you interact with the world, you become quantum, mechanically entangled with it. You observe a sunset, and photons from the sun interact with your eyes, and your brain processes that information, and quantum states collapse in your neurons, and that creates entanglement between you and the world. Not in some mystical sense, but in the precise physical sense of quantum mechanics. Your state is correlated with the world state. And quantum entanglement doesn't have a spatial limit. Once you're entangled with something, that correlation persists until something breaks it. And in practice, entanglement spreads. The photons that bounced off you interact with other particles. The air molecules you breathed out interact with other air molecules. The gravitational field you created by having mass affects everything around you, and all of these interactions create a web of correlations that extends ultimately throughout the entire universe. So you are not isolated, and you're not a separate entity that pops into existence, lives briefly, and vanishes. You're entangled with everything, and that entanglement is information. Information about you encoded in the quantum state of the cosmos, and that information cannot be destroyed. Now, Let me connect this to my conformal cyclic cosmology. In CCC, the universe goes through infinite cycles, aeons. Each aeon begins with a Big Bang and ends in heat death. But the end of one aeon becomes the beginning of the next. And crucially, information passes from one aeon to the next. The mechanism is subtle. In the far future, when our universe has expanded to infinity, when all matter has decayed and all black holes have evaporated, the universe will consist only of radiation. And radiation traveling at the speed of light doesn't experience time. From the perspective of a photon, the entire future of the universe is instantaneous. Through conformal rescaling, a mathematical transformation that preserves angles but not lengths, that infinite future can be compressed into a finite boundary, and that boundary becomes the Big Bang of the next aeon. The geometry matches, the mathematics is exact, and information from our aeon can pass through encoded in the structure of that boundary. So your information, the pattern that was you, doesn't just persist in this aeon. It passes into the next, not as a conscious entity, not as a soul, but as geometric information encoded in the conformal structure of space-time. You become part of the initial conditions of the next universe. This is not reincarnation. You don't come back as someone else, but the information that was you, the choices you made, the states you collapsed, the entanglements you created, all of that contributes to the structure of the next aeon. You're woven into the fabric of the next universe. Your existence has permanent consequences, not just in this cosmic cycle, but eternally. Now, I know what you're thinking. This isn't the same as survival. This isn't immortality in any meaningful sense. You won't be conscious in the next aeon. You won't remember your life. So, what's the point? If I'm dead, if I don't experience anything, why does it matter that information persists? And you're right. This is not the comforting afterlife of religion. There's no heaven where you reunite with loved ones. There's no continuation of your subjective experience. When your brain stops, your consciousness stops. That's real. That's death. But here's what matters. Your life was real, genuinely, permanently real. You were not a temporary glitch in an otherwise meaningless universe. You were not a brief flicker of consciousness in an ocean of dead matter. You were a pattern of information that participated in the fundamental processes of reality. You collapsed quantum states. You made choices. You created entanglement. And all of that is written into the structure of space-time forever. You matter. Not because some god is watching. Not because some cosmic plan requires you. But because the universe is information, and you are part of that information, and information is conserved. You can't be erased. Physically impossible. Your existence is a permanent fact, as real as the curvature of space-time around the sun. As permanent as the Big Bang itself. And this changes how we should think about death. Death is not annihilation. It's not being erased from existence. It's the end of your subjective experience. Yes, the end of your consciousness processing information, but it's not the end of you as an information structure. You become past rather than present. But the past is real. The past exists in space-time just as surely as the present does. Think about ancient civilizations, Egypt, Rome, the Mayans. The people who built those civilizations are dead. But did they ever exist? Of course they did. Objectively, really, permanently. Their world lines are part of space-time. Their choices shaped history. Their existence had consequences that ripple forward to us. They were real. They are real in the four-dimensional sense. And so are you. Right now, you're creating your world line. Every choice you make, every moment you experience is becoming a permanent part of the structure of reality. And when you die, that structure doesn't disappear. You become complete. Your world line ends, but it exists, whole and permanent in space-time. This is why I've spent my life working on physics, because physics tells us what's real. And what's real is that the universe is not matter obeying laws. It's information structured by geometry, and consciousness is how that information experiences itself. And death is not the destruction of information. It's the completion of a pattern. You are not watching the universe from outside. You are the universe knowing itself. And when your local processing stops, when your brain ceases to function, the information that was you remains not as a ghost, not as a soul, but as a permanent structure in space-time, entangled with everything contributing to the initial conditions of the next aeon. And that's not nothing. That's everything, because it means every moment matters. Every choice you make is permanent. Every act of kindness, every moment of love, every thought you think, it's all real, all permanent, all woven into the eternal fabric of reality. You get to exist once completely, permanently, and that existence is not erased when you die. It's completed. Your life is a four-dimensional sculpture in space-time, and it exists forever, not continuing, not repeating, but existing as a timeless fact. This is what physics teaches us, and it's more profound than any religious story about afterlife, because this is real. This is what the mathematics demands. Information cannot be destroyed. Black holes prove it. Quantum mechanics requires it. And that means you, the information structure that is you, cannot be destroyed either. Death is not the end. It's the end of processing, the end of consciousness, the end of experiencing, but it's not the end of existence. You are, you were, you will always have been as real as any fact of physics, as permanent as space-time itself. And when the universe cycles into its next aeon, when the conformal boundary of our heat-death becomes their Big Bang, the information that was you will be there, not conscious, not aware, but present, contributing, shaping, part of the eternal structure. You are not temporary. You are permanent. Not because you live forever, but because you lived at all. And in the four-dimensional geometry of space-time, at all means always. That is what physics tells us. That is what the conservation of information means. That is why death is not the end. Because the end is just a moment on your world line. And the world line itself is eternal. You will die, but you will never not have existed. And in physics, existence is not a temporary state. It's a permanent feature of reality. Death is not the end. It's the completion, and completion is forever.